You know, I get a lot of books on my desk, and I start paging through them to see which ones interest me. I got a stack of them right here. And there's one that really grabbed my attention called Revolt, with a beautiful exclamation mark at the end of it, How to Defeat Obama and Repeal His Socialist Programs, a Patriot's Guide. And I said, wait a minute. Socialist programs? Somebody has the guts to finally say it? Dick Morris, how are you, my friend?
Good. Well, terrific. That's an exclamation point, not a question mark.
No, it's definitely that. Now, tell me something. How the hell do you find the time to write all these books? That's number one.
My wife writes half of them. And Steve Ducey asked me, does she, how do you do it? And I said, she writes half, I write half. And then we swap. And Ducey said, does she ever say, honey, I love you, but this isn't much good? And I said, well, she skips the first part.
But she's obviously very intelligent because,
fabulous.
I mean, if she's writing half of these books and editing and all the rest of it.
One of the sections she wrote in this book is so great. It's Everything Congress Doesn't Want You to Know. How to find out everything Congress doesn't want you to know.
Tell us about that section.
Well, she goes through, literally, go here, scroll down, click here, go here, to find out their assets, their liabilities, their net worth, who they owe money to, who they borrowed from, how they vote, what their attendance record is, where they junk it, what their foreign travel is, what kickbacks they got from donations from lobbyists for the earmarks that they got. Like she found that Sherrod Brown, for example, an Ohio senator, he's gotten $4.5 million of campaign contributions from lobbyists for whom he got earmarks. You know, he gets $600,000 for Cincinnati, and he trumpets it on creating jobs in Cincinnati. And then he gets $120,000 from the lobbyists hired by the city.
Mm-hmm.
So it's where you can find everything.
And that's so sleazy because, you know, there's outright graft, and we know what that is, and then there's this other game, and this other game is worse because they use our money.
Right. And all the senators say, oh, I'm getting earmarks to promote jobs. Well, we know that's phony. We used to think it's just campaign contributions from the industries. But now it turns out it's literally kickbacks from the lobbyists. So I used to think, okay, well, you know, if you get an earmark for a private business, yeah, they're going to give you campaign money. But, you know, not the University of Akron or not the city of Cincinnati. But no, they all have lobbyists who they hire, and this is the campaign contributions the lobbyists gave them. It's on opensecrets.org, and a great group, and Eileen really tells you how to go and find it.
All right, so one of the subchapters that you have here is How to Beat Obama. Everybody wants to know. Go ahead.
Well, what this book is designed to do is all of us are asking the same question. We won the House. We won a bunch of governorships, a bunch of state legislatures. And how do we beat him and finish the job? And in the course of it, how do we get rid of these horrible programs and block these executive orders that he's doing? The theme of this book is that the way Obama could win is to move to the center, just like Clinton did when I worked with him. And we have to block that. And the way to block it is to be constantly pressing for spending cuts and repeal of his various programs over the three bills he has to sign: debt limit increase, continuing resolution to keep the government open, and next year's budget. So, for example, I say that what we should do is, obviously, when the budget comes up and you want to appropriate the money to the IRS, you include a provision saying you can't hire the 13,000 agents to enforce the individual mandate to buy insurance, and you can't divert money for that purpose. And the Senate votes no, and Obama threatens a veto. Then what I think the Republicans should do is say, okay, there will be no IRS budget. Unless EPA agrees not to regulate carbon, there will be no EPA budget. Unless the FCC agrees to lay off talk radio, there'll be no FCC budget.
All right, let me just clarify. So what you're saying is rather than send these big appropriations bills, chop them up into little pieces, use salami tactics.
And defund them with a pinpoint precision. So, for example, HHS, Health and Human Services, is charged with setting up the basis for health care rationing, and another entity within HHS is charged with cutting Medicare. So obviously you defund those two, but then Obama won't sign it. So what you do then is you take the administrative part of HHS, the secretary, the deputy secretary, the assistants, the typists, the staff, all that stuff, and you defund it. You don't do appropriations for them. And you say, we're not giving them any appropriations. The cabinet secretary won't get a salary, Sebelius, until you agree to block the implementation of the Medicare rationing, Medicare cuts and the rationing. The NLRB, Labor Relations Board, wants to impose.
Well, no, I get the drift. Now, here's my concern: is the Republican leadership in the House talking to you, or are you talking to them?
Yeah, I am, and in fact, tomorrow morning, I'm going down to Washington to meet with, I hope, 70 or 80 of the congressmen. I hope most of the freshman class.
I think this is a great idea. I mean, to break them out into little pieces. Okay, then don't sign it. Who cares?
Yep. Right now, the appropriation process, as you know very well, but some of your listeners might not, is broken into 12 or 13 different lump sums that involve 8 or 9 agencies each. I'm saying, like cancer radiation, be very pinpointed about what you're going after, and always tie the defunding to a politically unacceptable price, a bureaucratically unacceptable price. So, for example, the 5 commissioners of the FCC draw no salary and have no staff until the FCC commits to accepting a budget resolution that says you can't mess with talk radio.
You know, Dick, I'm talking to Dick Morris. His book is Revolt. You can get it on Amazon.com. Hey, boys, have we put it on my website yet? And the social sites, too? This is a great book. This is more than a book. This is a hand-to-hand combat, how we win. Now, Dick Morris, let me ask you. This is like the memo I would have written to them, to the Congress, if I were their consultant. Well, here's the thing. It is very important when you speak to them that they understand that if Obama were in their shoes, he'd be doing exactly this. He does anything he wants to do, right?
Sure. Absolutely. But the game here is you don't have one big Armageddon government shutdown for 2 reasons. First of all, it can backfire on you. You don't know how it plays out with the liberal media. But most importantly, it ends. After 2 or 3 weeks, it's over. This stuff keeps on giving, so that, you want $100 billion of extra debt limit authority. Okay, that's going to cost you $10 billion in cuts. You want $200 billion, that'll cost you $20 billion in cuts. You want 4 weeks of extension on the continuing resolution, that's going to cost you $8 billion in cuts. And Obama, every day of the week, has to be out there defending his liberal programs, opposing the spending cuts. And Obama said it best. He said, I'm not going to refight the battles of 2009 and 10. Yeah, right, because you know what happens. You lose. Yeah. And we need to make him refight the battles piece by piece. And then, we wrote this book in November, we predict that the real action will be at the state level. And we basically predict what's going on in Wisconsin and Ohio and Indiana, in fact, name those states. And at that level, you further force him to the left, defending these thugs who are occupying the state capitol. Right. And the point we make in that is you need to tie this to education reform. You need to make clear the stuff you're taking off the table in collective bargaining are things like we want to be able to limit tenure. We want to be able, if we have to do layoffs, to do it based on merit, not seniority. We want merit pay so we can pay really good teachers a lot of money. And we can't do this under the union contract. So we want those removed from collective bargaining so we're free to do it. And you need to make that point. And then the final piece of the puzzle is you take Medicaid and you block grant it to the states. And you say, if you don't want to cover Viagra, you don't have to. If you don't want to cover people up to $60,000 income, you don't have to. And you roll it back to 2008 spending levels and you block grant it to the states. And if you do all that, the 2 leading things you spend money on, education and Medicaid, get returned to the power of the states, and we suddenly have a 10th Amendment again. Mm-hmm. And secondly, if you're confronting him on each of these agency shutdowns and each of these continuing resolutions, you're forcing him over and over again to be a liberal, and you're surgically hitting him where it hurts to force him to abandon these programs.
All right, you know what? Are you going to be able to hang around one more segment?
Yeah, sure, of course.
I don't do that for anybody. You are intriguing me here. This is a fascinating book. But when we come back, Dick Morris, and the book is Revolt, you can get it on Amazon.com and everywhere else, I have a question, a personal question. How did you evolve into a fiscal conservative like you did, or were you always? Don't answer it yet, okay? And we'll be right back with Dick Morris. But the book is Revolt. It's hot off the presses, How to Defeat Obama and Repeal His Socialist, I said socialist programs, A Patriot's Guide by Dick Morris and Eileen McGann. Dick Morris, this really is a fascinating book. I mean, you must have put a lot of thought into this book.
Oh, I did. We both did. You know, we were talking earlier about how you turn off the funds for the specific agencies. There's a further concept in here. You hit him where it hurts the most, even if it's not topically relevant. You say, okay, I'm going to defund the White House. Okay? I mean,
now, wait a minute. He can't have his weekly concerts if you do that.
I'll keep your security and everything, but all of your top aides, all of your assistant chiefs of staff, your chief of staff, they're going to have to work for free.
Now, I don't think Boehner will do that.
Well, the point is you hit him where it hurts the most to force him to give up these programs.
So answer my question before we went to the break.
I'm the walking embodiment of Churchill's line about if you're not a liberal when you're 20, you have no heart, and you're not a conservative when you're 40, you have no brain. I had all kinds of ideas of stuff that I believed in passionately when I was younger. I was opposed to nuclear power, and then I saw that France had it, and it didn't have any problems, and now we're dependent on foreign oil. I thought that natural gas prices were way too high and needed regulation. Reagan deregulated them, and all of a sudden the price dropped because the supply increased. The biggie was that I was passionate about nuclear war and about nuclear disarmament. I was a real peacenik. And then Reagan did everything I disagreed with, and it worked. Russia fell apart, and the danger of a world being blown up stopped. So in the 80s, I became a Republican, personally. I started voting Republican. In other words, I voted for Carter in 1980, Reagan in 84, and then, of course, Bush in 88. And in my political practice, I stopped handling Democrats in 1988, worked only for Republicans, except for Clinton, who I'd grandfathered in because I'd been working for him since we were 30 years old together. And Clinton moved to the right with me. This whole notion of opportunity and responsibility and the social contract and all of that is stuff that we really developed together as a reaction to the Carter liberalism. And then he got away from it after he got elected because he had this Democratic Congress that told him you have to be liberal to get our support, and if you are liberal, we'll protect you. And I warned him. I said, you'll become not their candidate, you'll become their hostage. And they won't be your congressmen, they'll be your jailers. And then after he lost Congress, he called me and he said, I've gotten so liberal I can't even recognize myself. That's a quote from him. How do I move back to the center? And he hired me to do that. And he knew when he did it that I was a Republican.
When is the last time you saw him?
Oh, about 4 years ago. We ran into each other at one of his conferences.
Did he say anything?
Yeah, he was very sweet, and we chatted for 15 minutes. I'm actually going to go see him because I'm a little worried about him. I think he's not looking very well. But you know, he hired me because I was a Republican, and my big client was Trent Lott. And, you know, I could work stuff and make it work and have him move to the center, but it wasn't cosmetics. You know, we passed welfare reform.
All right, listen to me. We're running out of time. This is I want to say one other thing, though. It's clear to me you are very passionate about trying to help save this country now, too. You really are concerned we're going over the cliff here.
You got that right. This country is being destroyed. It's, you know, the economists said a while ago that the recession was over and everybody laughed at them. They're right. The boom-bust cycle has ended. This is the new normal. This was what Europe has always had when you enacted these policies there. He's carried them over here, and we have the same unemployment, the same lack of growth, the same lack of upward mobility that has characterized Europe.
Well, Dick Morris, let me say this. You're a fascinating guest. You really are. This is an outstanding book. You outdid yourself. Tell your wife the same thing. Good. It is Revolt, How to Defeat Obama and Repeal His Socialist Programs, A Patriot's Guide. I hope you'll all get it. It is stuffed, filled with great stuff, great ideas. Thank you, Dick Morris. We'll be right back.